So we're going to start exploring how to use the web storage to store data between sessions. You can also store data in the session. I'll probably show you that later. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and add a refactoring to our quoter. And so now we're going to use the web storage mechanism so it'll remember the last quote that was delivered across the sessions. So when the user returns and relaunches the app, it'll give them a different quote than the last one they saw in the previous session. So we're in Dreamweaver, and this is the code for our current quoter. Real quickly, I'll show you the situation there just to remind you what we have. So I'm going to just run this locally real quickly here. And so this has my search mechanism that we built over the refactoring. And it has the stop feed and show all quotes buttons. And I think the quote feed is set for about 5 seconds here. So there you go. So you can see that it's working. So that's the current version of this. Now I'm looking at this locally, but to get this to work with the storage, it seemed like I had to run it on the server. Okay. So if we look over here, this is the one that I'm going to look at in a moment here that's actually on the server. Okay, let's go in and look at our code. So if we go to the script block here, first thing I did is I added a global variable, and that is storage enabled, and I set that to false. Okay, and then this other code is all from previously there, but here's the new code here. And you can see that what we're going to do is we just determine if storage is available. This is the modern JavaScript way of seeing if the HTML5 storage mechanism is implemented. If we wanted to make this more robust, we could use the old cookie method. But generally, I'm not going to show you that. We'll just go ahead and assume that we're going to write for modern browsers. And by the time you graduate, that will be true. Okay, so if type of storage, that means that it's not undefined, that means it's implemented. So now our global control variable will be set to true. That won't get changed again. And then notice this, if local storage.currQuote. That's actually where we're checking to see if we stored the current quote value. And if we did, then we set the curquote variable, which we use here globally, to be that value. Otherwise, it'll default to -1. The reason it's -1 is in the code where it finds a random quote. If you make the index -1 of the current quote, that means any new random quote will be allowed. So that's really saying we don't have a quote. Go ahead and any is okay. All right. Now, because this is difficult to see in the implementation, I'm using the console log here to record this so we can see that. I don't really need that for the app. I'm only using that to demonstrate that it's actually working. Okay. So again, local storage.curquote actually is shorthand for read curquote, and then it assigns it here to this, and then we prompt the console to indicate that we got that quote. Okay, so this code will work one time when the page loads, and again it checks to see if we have storage, sets the variable to indicate that we do if that's the case. Otherwise it sets it to false, and then if we have the local storage, then we look for the current quote. Now it might not be there. This might be the first time that the user has opened our app, or they might have deleted their cache and removed all the data. So in the event that it is there, we go ahead and read it and we prompt. Otherwise, we don't do anything because it'll turn out to be that -1 value. And notice how I've set the console up to do that. I don't really need this else block here at all. I'm just doing that so I have really good feedback in my console log so I can see how the program runs. Okay, the only other thing that we have to do then is if we have storage, every time we get a current quote, we need to write it to the storage so that when the user closes, we'll have that. That's going to be down here in the get new quote function that we wrote previously. And so again, here's the new code for that. So again, if storage enabled, that's that global variable I set to at the beginning, then here's the code to save the quote. So notice how this works. Local storage dot set item cur quote, which is the name of the quote, and then the value here, which is the variable. Now, I'll tell you a funny little story here. Originally, I miswrote this and I had a capital C. And of course, since the variables are case sensitive, it didn't work. And I couldn't figure out why it wasn't saving. It wasn't reading the quote back in that I had saved. So that's because I was saving it with a different name. Okay. Again, I have the console log here to store this current quote. And you know what? I've got some okay, return content. What is that? Oh, okay, sorry. That's part of the other method there. So again, the only thing I've done is just added this in. And of course, if storage is not enabled, we don't do anything, so we don't have an else clause there. Okay, like I mentioned, I had to put this on the server, so I opened the WinSCP program so I could transfer the code as I changed it to the server, and I'm working on my Google Drive actually. So let's go on back to our server window here, and let's see if I can get the right one up. That's the SCP. There we go. So you can see that this is actually being served on UC file space. And I'll go ahead and reload it. And the previous session quote is 43. So then it goes ahead and begins to generate quotes that are not like that. Okay, so it did read the storage and it read that from the last session we had 43. And then you can see these console writes as we are getting new quotes, we're updating the cache. So let's take a quick look here. So notice the last quote I get here is 3. And now quickly I'll reload. And then it reloaded, it opened and read the value 3, and then it continued to generate new quotes. So that's pretty much all there is to it here. Let's see here, we are in, I think that is, yeah, that was Firefox. I think I have a Chrome window open here. It's probably worth looking at it with that too. Sorry about that, I'm having a little trouble manipulating here. There we go. All right. Yep, here we go. So again, we'll reload. That's interesting. It doesn't seem to be reading the previous quote. So it should read across the session. Let's try that again. There we go. That time it worked. 27. Okay. It shouldn't matter what browser you're using here. Well, that's not true, actually. Probably it does matter what browser you're doing. That's interesting. I'll have to do some research on that. Okay, let's go on back to Dreamweaver real quick and just review the syntax here. Because I already had it written, I might have gone over it a little too quick. So again, the first thing we do is we check to see if we have storage. So if type of storage is not equal to undefined, that means we have storage. Otherwise, we don't have storage. And then if local storage.curquote, that means not only do we have storage, but we have a value stored from the last session for curquote. Okay. Again, local storage is the storage that runs across sessions. So you could call it inter-session storage. And then we also have session storage, which only lasts for the session, and we're not using that here. So again, local storage dot name of the variable returns the value, and then if we come down here to our get quote method, set item, we'll return that. It looks like in Dreamweaver, I noticed that you could do local storage dot get item also, but in the code that I got from W3 Schools, it didn't show that for writing the code, and does seem to work without that. So it might be that there's an alternative syntax. Okay, I think that's pretty good for how we use the local storage. Again, this is an HTML5 component, and it replaces an earlier mechanism, which was cookies. And cookies were kind of a pain to use, and they had some issues. And so this is much better. All right.